When most people hear Holy See or, Vatican City, they immediately picture these grand cathedrals, popes in flowing robes, maybe ancient dusty scrolls, that kind of thing. That's the image that springs to mind for most of us, isn't it? But today, we're taking a deep dive into something completely different, something you probably never associate with it. It's genes, because beneath all the robes and the centuries of tradition, there's actually this truly fascinating biological story playing out. And it kind of challenges our whole idea of what makes a nation.
Exactly. And that's where the real paradox kicks in. Scientists have found out that Vatican City, despite being the smallest country in the world, hosts one of the most genetically complex populations on Earth. And, maybe even more surprising, one of the least studied. Now, that's surprising because, well, it's not a population in the way we usually think about it. It's not home to some hereditary ethnic group. It's more like a rotating elite, clerics, guards, diplomats, and they're drawn from literally every corner of the globe. So, yeah, the big question becomes, how do you even start to study genetics in a place that doesn't really have a native inherited gene pool?
Okay, right. Let's unpack this because this is where it gets really interesting, the challenge of actually studying them. Our mission for this deep dive, then, is to explore how historians, researchers, how they've tackled this unique problem. What have they actually managed to find out about this global genetic mosaic? And why is it both so fascinating and, well, sometimes pretty controversial, too? So let's maybe set the scene first. Unlike, well, pretty much any other nation, Vatican citizenship isn't something you're born with. Historians really stress this point. It's based entirely on service to the Catholic Church.
Yeah, and the immediate result of that policy is this ultra-rare demographic. We're talking about a population made up of people from over 120 nationalities.
Real 120?
Yes, all living within this incredibly tiny space, just 0.49 square kilometers. It's tiny. Demographic reports, they usually put the average number of official citizens at around, say, 800. And get this, roughly 50 to 70% of those are non-native Italians. So just imagine that concentration of global background.
That really is incredible to picture. I mean, people from over 100 places, all squeezed into less than half a square kilometer. Is that what geneticists mean when they call it a microcosm of human genetic diversity? Is that the idea?
That's precisely it. What's so fascinating here is just the sheer concentration, the density of global diversity in such a tiny area. It's genuinely one of the few places on Earth where you could potentially find African, European, Asian, and Latin American haplogroups all living side by side, all within a single state-sanctioned population of fewer than 1,000 people. And just to clarify for you, haplogroups, they're basically large groups of genetic markers, right? They share a common ancestor way back. They give us this powerful way to trace human migration ancestry over thousands of years. So think about it, it's like a global genetic snapshot, but a miniature. You don't really find that anywhere else.
Okay, that sounds like, well, a goldmine for a geneticist, but isn't this a very private, sort of insular community? Have researchers actually been able to get access to study this unique population to see what patterns emerge from all that diversity? Because, if they have, then there's real data we can talk about.
They have, yes. I mean, despite all the complexities, researchers have managed to gain access, mostly through voluntary health studies.
Right.
These were primarily conducted just for routine medical care for the residents. And these studies, they've actually detailed some really specific genetic findings. It's quite interesting. For instance, they found high diversity in mitochondrial DNA, mtDNA.
Right, the maternal line.
Exactly, inherited just from the mother.
Yeah.
Gives us clues about maternal lineage. They specifically mentioned finding the H, L, and M haplogroups. These are common markers tracing back to origins across Europe, Africa, and Asia, respectively. Then, if you look at the Y-DNA studies that's on the male citizens, tracing the paternal line, so this includes clergy and the Swiss Guards, they found strong clusters of R1b haplogroups. It's very typical for Western Europe. Also E1b1b, which suggests North African or maybe Mediterranean origins, and J2, which points more towards Middle Eastern roots.
Huh. So really all over the map.
Pretty much. And if you connect this back to the bigger picture, I mean, this kind of concentrated diversity, it's almost impossible to find in traditional nation states. It really makes the Vatican one of the most genetically international micropopulations in the world.
Okay, so we've got the diversity, we've got some findings, but there's this unique social and religious angle here in the Vatican, isn't there? It introduces a specific challenge and maybe, some controversy when we talk about genetics, because the vast majority of citizens are priests, cardinals, people sworn to celibacy. So some critics argue, well, studying genetics here is kind of scientifically pointless. The argument being no reproduction means no genetic continuity. So what's the
Uh,
point, right?
well, not necessarily. That's one view, but bioethicists and anthropologists, they push back against that. They counter by explaining that the Holy See is actually like a living experiment in a way.
Yeah.
It demonstrates how sharing a space, having shared social roles, even without necessarily sharing genes, how that can shape community health trends, things like disease susceptibility, even epigenetic stress factors.
Epigenetics. Right. That's about how lifestyle affects gene expression.
Exactly. It's how our environment, our lifestyle can sort of switch genes on or off without changing the actual DNA sequence. So the unique environment and lifestyle in the Vatican can have significant health impacts, regardless of direct biological inheritance.
And then maybe adding another layer of, I guess, historical intrigue to all this are these whispers, right, in historical circles, suggestions that maybe some high-ranking clergy centuries ago might have, well, quietly fathered children, creating these sort of unofficial bloodlines that some researchers claim might still exist, maybe in Rome or even further afield. How do historians or geneticists even try to look into claims like that? And what are the ethical issues there? Especially with the celibacy vows.
Yeah, that's precisely where you hit those tricky boundaries.
Yeah.
Genetics, ethics, legacy gets complicated fast. Researchers might try looking at, say, genealogical records, old documents, perhaps even very discrete DNA sampling, but only from descendants who willingly consent. But it's obviously fraught with challenges. You've got huge questions of privacy, consent, and just the basic definition of lineage in a place that prioritizes spiritual succession over biological. It definitely raises that important question about how we define and study populations, particularly when tradition and biology seem to be pulling in different directions.
It really does seem like the Vatican just flips the script on the usual model of national identity. In most countries, genetics, ancestry, a common history that often plays a big part in defining who we are as a nation. But not here.
Right? And that's the core paradox, isn't it? In the Vatican, your identity is defined by your belief, your role, your service. It's not about where your ancestors came from. And yet, through centuries of pulling people in from all over the world for that service, Vatican City has unintentionally become this rare archival site of global human DNA diversity. Some researchers have even called it a genetic map without a homeland.
A genetic map without a homeland.
Yeah, which is kind of a powerful metaphor, not just for the city, but maybe for the Catholic Church itself. What's fascinating about that metaphor, I think, is how it challenges our ideas of what makes a nation, or even who we are as individuals. It sort of shows us that identity can be built and sustained through things other than biology, even while this incredibly rich tapestry of genetic information is just there.
Yeah.
It definitely broadens how we think about belonging, way beyond just bloodlines.
That is a really powerful idea. And it also gives us maybe a unique way to look at health patterns within this very, very unique population, doesn't it?
Absolutely. There was a voluntary medical review back in 2019 that shared some specific findings. Apparently, Vatican residents had, on average, lower cholesterol and lower rates of heart disease compared to Italians of similar age groups living outside.
Oh, interesting. Why might that be?
Well, the likely reasons are things like a very routine lifestyle, maybe adherence to Mediterranean-style diets, and probably restricted substance use compared to the general population.
Okay, makes sense.
But on the flip side, the same review highlighted that stress markers and sleep disorders were found to be notably high, particularly among the high-ranking clergy, which is potentially linked, as you might imagine, to the intense political, spiritual, maybe administrative pressures of that Vatican environment. It's quite a fascinating look at how a very specific lifestyle in a unique place can affect health in both positive and negative ways, sort of regardless of where people originally came from genetically.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how tangled up our biology and our life choices, our environment really are, which kind of brings us back around to that bigger, almost philosophical question that some of the sources hinted at. Is the Holy See's gene profile special because of what it actually contains, all that diversity, or is it special because of what it refuses to become, a place defined by biological inheritance?
That's a great way to put it. What's so fascinating here, I think, is that in a world that can be pretty obsessed with ancestry and purity and ethnic identity, the Vatican stands out as this genetic paradox. It's a place packed with global diversity, but one that deliberately, institutionally avoids biological reproduction. It's a city built entirely on spiritual legacy, not biological legacy.
Yeah.
And maybe in its diversity and its complexity and, yeah, its contradictions too.
Yeah.
Maybe the Holy See actually holds up a kind of mirror to modern humanity. Perhaps it's a reminder that we are, all of us, more than just where we come from genetically.
It It really is one genetic story that feels as much philosophical as it is scientific, doesn't it? It
Yeah.
certainly makes you think differently about what it even means to be a nation or a people.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Is it even appropriate to be studying the genetics of a population like this? Or does this kind of scientific inquiry somehow challenge the very foundations of what the Vatican stands for? Something to ponder.